Welcome all the participants in this effort to continue the medical education in the field of transesophageal echocardiography. This is being done under the auspices of Forum of Cardiac Anesthesiologists, Bangalore. And I see some of the experts in the group. I request them to make the comments at the end of the session. And any questions may be either directly asked or can be put on the chat box. Before we start, I would like to thank Dr. Jagadish and Murli Chakravarti for being with us, and also for the Dr. Prabhu Shankar, Keshamurthy, Manjunath for supporting this activity from the Forum of Cardiac Anesthesiologists group. And we have Dr. Sridhar Joshi, who is well known to our fraternity, one of the upcoming and bright anesthesiologists, cardiac anesthesiologists. He'll be talking to us about the segmental approach to classify congenital heart disease. And may I request Dr. Sridhar Joshi to start his deliberations.
Sure. Good morning, sir. Good morning, everyone. So thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for the kind introduction as well. Rajiv, my screens are visible to everyone. Is my screen visible to everyone, Rajiv?
We can see it. I can see.
So audio is clear, sir. Shall I start off?
Yes, audio is good.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. On a wonderful Sunday morning on Valentine's Day, I guess. Pretty dry topic to begin with, but then let's see what really matters to us in the perioperative period when it comes to sequential segmental analysis. This concept of sequential segmental analysis went as an approach to understand the congenital heart in a better way, so that we have a common language across the teams which discuss the perioperative management of congenital heart diseases. So basically, it's a three-part notation, which just a second. So it's a three-part notation where three different segments in the development of the heart, the atria, the ventricles, and the great arteries are connected, so that there is a common language between how they connect with each other. There are normalcies in these connections, and as I say, there are embryological aberrations where the connections go wrong. So to understand these normal connections and abnormal connections, came this approach of a three-part notation, which is known as the Van Praagh classification system. Credit goes to Stella and Van Praagh for introducing this in the early 60s, which has been used from then from Boston University across the globe. So to begin with, one specific rule of thumb is when we speak of congenital heart disease and the echocardiography, I'm sure most of you have heard this word morphologic, right atrium, morphologic left atrium, morphologic ventricles. So it all goes to say that the word morphologic is used to indicate the internal characteristic structure of a given chamber, and it is without the implication about the actual location of the structure. So morphological right atrium has a specific set of internal characteristic structures. No matter where that atrium is placed, whether it is on the left side of the heart or the right side of the heart, it continues to be called the morphologic right atrium. The same morphologic concepts exist to all the four chambers. So there is morphological right atrium, right ventricle, morphological left atrium, and a morphological left ventricle. It goes to say that they are defined by the structure rather than the placement across. So whenever one says morphological ventricle or a right ventricle for that matter, remember that it is by structure and not by precise placement. It could be on the left or onto the right. So this basic rule of thumb will help us understand the terminologies used across these congenital heart diseases. So going in precise to the Van Praagh classification, you see three specific notations here. So whenever we see a lot of echocardiographies, we see people write them as SLL, SDD, SLD with malposition and stuff like that. So there are three specific terms, just like in a pacing system goes the atria, the conduction, and the pacing in our pacemaker. So these three segments, one talks of the atria or the association of the atria with the other part of the body. The second talks of the ventricle, and the third talks of the great vessels. So they try to split it into three separate aspects and try to see how it's easy to communicate among the teams. So this is called a sequential segmental analysis, where in a sequence, the segments are analyzed to understand their association. So to emphasize how the chambers are connected, there are small additions, the atrioventricular connections. The atrium and the ventricle are connected by the atrioventricular valves, and the ventriculo-arterial junction, which is the ventricle and the great arteries with a small junction in between, and that's the connection. We'll go to the two connecting segments separately, but first we start off with the three important notations. A bit of a small brief on the embryology of how precisely the heart goes. We all know that it's a tube to begin with, where the venous return and the arterial return come. They mix in the primitive atrium. Part of it, the oxygenator sequentially goes into the one single ventricle which is present. That goes to the outlet, which is the bulbus cordis, and then it opens up into two big truncus arteriosus. This is the most primitive part of the heart, how it began as a tube, and then it folds in different angles, which will create what the newborn complete heart looks like. So a bit of normal D-looping. Remember, D-loop is normal for all practical purpose. Normal looping is D-loop, and D-loop is normal. So as the tube starts unfolding itself, so slowly each component starts deriving or making the progenitors for the future ones. So the bulbus cordis ends up being the right ventricle. The single ventricle which was there in the tube ends up being the left ventricle, and the truncus, the great artery, opens up into two different parts, one the aorta and the PA. And this differentiation starts off at each level simultaneously. This division into two ventricles and the atrium separately starts simultaneously, and it progresses towards a complete heart. With this mentioning, as I said, once the D-looping is dextrolooping. Once the LV folds over, the single ventricle folds towards the bulbus, this is when the left ventricle lies to the left and the right ventricle lies to the right. This is how a normal heart looks like. So a D-looping is a normal heart. If it exactly happens on the opposite side, whereas the LV had to go into the left side, it goes on to the right side, we call it the L-looping or the levo-looping. So the same tube unfolds itself. The previous one I'll go. If it goes to the left side like that, it becomes the normal D-looping. It goes to the right side like that, it becomes the L-looping. Still, as I mentioned, I'll repeat again. So this continues to be the morphological right ventricle, and this will continue to be the morphological left ventricle, despite of the fact that they are positioned differently. So morphologic word goes with the characteristics of the chamber, no matter where they are placed. As and when we move on into the congenital echocardiography, there are a few terminologies which seem a little confusing, but do not have much of a perioperative implication as such. But nomenclature is essential. That's where they go into. One is cardiac position, and next one is cardia. So the position, or when we say levo position, meso position, or dextro position, the word position means where in the whole of the chest is the major bulk of the heart position. So if it's on the left side that we all have in a normal heart, it's a levo position. If it's in the midline, that it could not differentiate whether it is completely on the right or left, it's a meso position. Where most of the heart lies onto the right side, it's a dextro position. The position of the heart could vary because of other extrinsic factors as well, as depending on the other organs of the chest that grow along. One of the examples includes hypoplasia or the genesis of the lung, which changes the position of the heart. Going to the cardia, this is levocardia, mesocardia, or dextrocardia. These entirely depend upon the cardiac axis. Where the axis of the heart is directed towards the left, it's called levocardia. Where it is directed towards the midline, it's called mesocardia. Where it is directed towards the right, it's called dextrocardia. Again, cardia has nothing to do with which ventricle is where, which atrium is where. It is entirely depend on where the axis of the heart is. So you can find every combination with levocardia, that is a normal heart and an abnormal heart. Mesocardia can be a normal heart, abnormal heart. Dextrocardia can be a normal heart or an abnormal heart. So cardia is only related to the cardiac axis. This animation, I guess, will help most of us understand what I'm trying to tell in the three segmental analysis. Like I told you, the first one is visceroatrial situs. It is nothing but the atria in relation to other organs of the body, the ventricular loop, and then the great vessel. Between them are the connections, the atrioventricular junction and the ventriculo-arterial junction. So when it's put all together, we have three different notations mentioning the atria, ventricle, and the great vessels, and two connections, which are the atrioventricular and the ventriculo-arterial junctions. Going on to the step one, the first part of it is the visceroatrial situs. So what is the visceroatrial situs? It's nothing but the relationship between atria and adjacent organs across the body. So there are three types of situs when it comes to visceroatria. This is called situs solitus, normal, situs inversus, exactly opposite, and we cannot make out what it is one of these two, it becomes situs ambiguous. So one of these goes as S, that is situs, inversus, that is completely opposite, or A, ambiguous, when we do not know what it is. So the visceroatrial designation in itself is made of three independent components. One is the visceral situs, which determines whether the liver, the stomach, the spleen are located on the patient's right or left. Then comes the thoracoabdominal, which basically takes into the bronchopulmonary anatomy into consideration. And third part is the atrial situs, which specifically talks of the atrial chambers, where they are placed on the left or the right, are they appropriately placed or not. I'll briefly get into the visceral situs and thoracoabdominal because they do not have great perioperative cardiac implications, though as an entity they do exist as abnormal aberrations in development. So in visceral situs, the defining part is the largest lobe of the liver, whether it is right or left, or the left, and the spleen and stomach, whether they are on the left. If this exists, this combination exists, it's a situs solitus with respect to the visceral situs. If the largest lobe is on the opposite direction, spleen is on the right side, we say it is situs inversus. If we are not able to make sure which lobe of the liver is where, the spleen is not sure, the stomach is not sure, then we go on with the ambiguous. So among the visceral situs, this is what it is with respect to liver and spleen. Coming to the thoracoabdominal situs, a little bit more complex based on the anatomy of the lung. Again, does not have a huge perioperative implication for cardiac anesthetist as such, but it does go on the basis that grossly clinically, the trilobed right lung remains on the right, and the trilobed right lung, when it is on the left, it becomes inversus. When there is duplication of sidedness or not fit into either of the category, it becomes ambiguous. Going to the more important one, what matters to us is the morphology of the right atrium. I repeat, morphological right atrium based on its structure is on the right, it is situs. Morphological right atrium based on the structure, it goes on the left, it is inversus. When you cannot determine the atrium in particular, whether it is morphologically fitting into the right or the left, we call it as the ambiguous one. Now, how do we define which atria is how? So I'll get into the details by showing you one transesophageal image. So right atrial appendage is more trapezoidal in shape, and the important point is the connection from the atrium to the appendage. It is far more broader in the right atrium than in the left atrium. One important point about right atrium definition is it usually receives flow from coronary sinus, and almost always the supradiaphragmatic IVC or the suprahepatic IVC, the segment of the IVC, once the hepatic veins join to it, wherever they drain, it can be deemed as right atrium almost always. The left atrium is more tubular in structure and the small connection with the chamber. There's a repetition of the same findings. Like I repeated again, the supradiaphragmatic IVC by a rule always drains into the right atrium, or the chamber that it drains into can be labeled as right atrium. The coronary sinus almost always drains into the right atrium by the Sebacean vein. This is one of the transesophageal echo images showing the right atrial with a broad base and connected to the atrium. Going to the morphological left atrium, it's more like a finger shape, and by definition, more than 3 pulmonary veins draining separately in a given chamber can be labeled as a left atrium. Difficult on transesophageal echo, but yes, on thoracic echo, it's very obvious to differentiate the openings of the pulmonary veins into a given atrium, and if there are more than 3 of them opening as independent openings, that can be labeled as morphological left atrium. This is one of the images of transesophageal left atrial appendage, easily seen in adults as well as in pediatrics. So going to visceroatrial designation, just repeating the same. Visceral situs is the atrium with respect to the other parts of the other organs. This is the bronchopulmonary segments and the atrial situs. If any letter recorded as A, we are not sure of any one of these, so it goes as ambiguous overall. If all the recorded are mentioned as situs, the liver on the right, stomach on the left, the bronchopulmonary segments are rightly differentiated, the right atrium is on the right side, it is solitus. If all the letters are inverses, then we put an inversus. So the first one will depend upon all these 3. Going on to a little bit of solitus one, where like I repeated, morphological right atrium, the liver are on the right side, the atrium is on the right, the liver is on the right, the trilobe is on the right. The left one has 2 lobes, the stomach and spleen on the right. This is a classical picture of a situs solitus. Situs inversus is exactly opposite. The morphological right atrium is on the left, the trilobed lung is on the left, The liver is on the left, spleen and stomach are on the right. So exactly a situs inversus. Going on to the ambiguous one, or a heterotaxis syndrome, where we're not sure whether the atrium is precisely the right atrial morphology or the left atrial morphology. It is usually associated with asplenia and right isomerism, where are two right atrium looking like bilateral right-sidedness. A polysplenia is left isomerism, where both the atria look like left-sided atria, and usually associated with polysplenia. Situs ambiguous already mentioned. Now, what is the importance of knowing this situs? Does it really carry any clinical value to us? It's obvious that whenever there is situs solidus, the incidence of congenital heart disease is 0.6 to 0.8, as we know in our normal population. The moment the situs is inversus, the congenital heart disease occurrence goes to 3 to 5%. And whenever there is situs inversus with a levocardia, the incidence of congenital heart disease or lesions in the abdomen, in the heart, go on significantly. Going on to the second component, that is the ventricular loop orientation. Again, a little bit of orientation, like I've already said. When it moves normally to the left, and the left part of the ventricle stays in the left part of the chest, we call it normal D-looping. When it moves exactly opposite, goes on to the right side, we call it levo-looping. And if we're not sure which of the two is there, it is called as, it is determined as X for the looping. Now, for that comes an important question in the perioperative period is, how do I define which of these is my ventricle? Again, I repeat, morphological right ventricle with these characteristics. The right ventricle has coarse trabeculae, has a presence of an apical moderator band. Papillary muscles are attached to both the interventricular septum and the free wall. It has a tricuspid AV valve, and the ventricle is in saddle shape. Another very important point about right ventricle definition is the placement of the atrioventricular valves on the right side is more apical than on the left side. One of the definitions to define a right ventricle, apart from the speaking of a moderator band, a papillary muscles on both sides, the left ventricle can be defined by a free septum. Interventricular septum on the LV side is always free without any attachments. Going on to definition, another important point of definition of left ventricle is the atrioventricular valves. The left atrioventricular valve, or what we normally call as mitral valve, is also known as septophobic. It always tries to stay away from the septum because there's an opening of aorta here. So most part of the left AV valve always stays away from the septum, and it is called septophobic. Whereas it is exactly opposite on the right side. The septal leaflet of the tricuspid normally present is septophilic, that there's a tendency that it goes more towards the septum more often than not. So this ventricle keeps its septum clean, nothing goes close to it. The right ventricle has a more coarse and more attachment on the interventricular septal side. The AV valve is more close to the interventricular septum. So these are few factors which differentiate a morphological left ventricle versus morphological right ventricle. These look good in a normal heart, and as and when the congenital heart lesions come into play, all these factors, multi-factors, come into picture to define whether a given ventricle is a morphological LV or a morphological right ventricle. I mentioned about the morphological LV as well. These are repetitions. One of the images which tries to tell us how the ventricles are placed. You can see the AV valve, right AV valve, the tricuspid valve in normal, is so close to the septum, whereas the left AV valve, the mitral valve, always tries to stay away from the septum. You can see a clean the LV side of the interventricular septum, but the right ventricular side of the interventricular septum is always trabeculated and having a lot of attachments of chordae onto it. So this is another short axis of the ventricles, again defining the coarse trabeculations on the right side, lesser trabeculations on the left side, much cleaner interventricular septum on the LV side, and a lot of trabeculations and attachment of chordae on the right side. There will be a lot of repetitions as we go, just to emphasize the fact that it is very essential to define a ventricle in congenital heart disease. Again, a moderator band on the right side. This is a LV long axis view where the moderator band on the right ventricle is seen. The left ventricular side of the IVS is much more smoother. Having defined the ventricles, moving on to the great arteries, the third part of the segmentation. Before we get into it, a very brief part of the embryology. Like I said, the truncus arteriosus, the one, the distal end of the primitive tube, which ends up being into the great arteries, the aorta and the PA, is one single tube to begin with. There are small bulbous ridges which appear over time as the heart starts developing. These ridges come to the center and complete. So to begin with, the pulmonary artery is pulmonary trunk is posterior, and the aorta is anterior. But as this ridge starts developing, this ridge that you can see starts developing, it spirals 180 degrees to differentiate and convert the posterior pulmonary trunk to come to anterior side at the end of complete development. So this spiral movement brings the anterior right ventricle PA to go more anteriorly, and the left ventricular aortic connections to go more posteriorly. So this is how the whole spinning looks like, the spiraling looks like. To begin with, where the pulmonary trunk is much more posterior, but at the end it comes up being anterior. This is the anterior pulmonary trunk, this is the posterior pulmonary trunk, and the septation brings them in this particular relation. As we go on to the relation, we'll see this. This is the pulmonary artery normally present, this is the aorta. So the normal definition of this relation is the pulmonary artery is always anterior, the aorta is always posterior. The aorta is always more towards the right, and pulmonary artery is always more towards the left. This is a normal association. This specifically comes into posture because the truncus is divided into two different structures, the aorta and the PA. Aorta is rooted to the left ventricle, takes the oxygenated blood. Pulmonary artery is rooted to the right ventricle, takes the deoxygenated blood. This association defines a lot of congenital heart lesions as we go ahead. So how do we define? Now, going back to now, I have said that it is so important that these two relations be maintained. How do we define what is a pulmonary artery and how do we define what is an aorta in a given congenital heart lesion? So one of the ways, there are many ways, of course, there can be exceptions to the rules, but one of the few rules always mentions that the aorta takes a curve, arch that it's normally have, whereas the pulmonary artery doesn't have this arch, goes and divides into right and left. So how do we differentiate in our transesophageal echo? In this deep transgastric view, in an augmented deep transgastric view rather, where you increase the depth more, you will see a curvature of the great artery coming out. So one of the definitions of aorta is a great artery which curves in this direction, in this particular aspect, is more likely to be aorta. The other facts are coronaries coming out. Majority of the times, aorta at least receives one coronary artery. There are a few exceptions though, but overall, it can be considered as, unless mentioned otherwise, coronaries are associated with the aorta. Whereas going on, so the same image where you can see there is a big VSD here and the great artery, the aorta arches out. So we can define this as aorta and see its relation to the left ventricle or the right ventricle in defining the perioperative decision making, whether it is rootable or not, or what can we do with this ventricular septal defect. Like I said, the pulmonary artery, so this was the case of tetralogy of Fallot. This is again a deep transgastric view at around 60 degrees. This is the right ventricle, again mentioned by the coarse trabeculations, the septum which is pretty busy, the septum which is pretty free on the left side. So this is a right ventricle and we see a pulmonary artery. We can see the small division of the pulmonary artery into the left, into the right and the left pulmonary arteries. If we can get this image, so we can easily define that this is a pulmonary artery and the ventricle associated with is right ventricle. So multiple factors, this being a right ventricle by definition of its morphology, and this dividing into two specific branches in the intra-pericardial cavity itself defines that this is pulmonary artery. So it is essential to differentiate whether it is a great artery, is aorta, or pulmonary in congenital heart disease. Another way of looking at it is our ascending aorta short axis view. A basic dictum, unless mentioned otherwise, is in transesophageal echo or transthoracic echo, in a normally related great vessels, you will not see both of them in one particular view. For example, if the aorta is in short axis, the pulmonary artery always is in long axis, or the other way around. If the pulmonary artery is in short axis, the aorta is always on the long axis. So this is normal definition. So we see a ascending aortic short axis view here, and we see a long pulmonary artery opening into the right and the left pulmonary arteries. The same one with color definition showing the right pulmonary artery and the left pulmonary artery. So going on to this extension of how they are, now that we know how normally they are placed, what are the extrapolations of this definition in the pathologic side? So normally, as I have already told you, this is anterior, this is posterior, this is right, this is left. So this is a normal situs soletus heart where the pulmonary artery is anterior, aorta is posterior and to the right. Okay, pulmonary is anterior, aorta is posterior and to the right. So this is called situs soletus, and we can easily mention a S in the third segment. When the aorta is posterior but is inverted, a mirror image, lateral mirror image becomes situs inversus completely. So the connections are normal, but just that the aorta has gone to the left, whereas normally it is onto the right and posterior. Transposition is usually when the great arteries completely switch over. The position of the aorta is taken by PA and the position of PA is taken by aorta. So this is called a classically transposition. So there is complete change, complete change in the position, the transposition. It applies when the aorta arises from the RV and the main PA arises from the LV. Now there are two ways of, again, this transposition itself, based on whether the great vessels D loop or L loop, whether they take a right loop or they take a left loop. D transposition and L transposition at the end of the day are clearly transpositions, but just that anatomically the looping is opposite direction. So when remember, in both the transposition, aorta is anterior and PA goes posterior. As simple as that. The moment PA goes posterior, it is more likely to be a transposition heart. If the aorta comes to the right side, it is a D transposition. If the aorta goes to the left side, it is called a levo transposition of great arteries. This is again a CT explanation of the same. What is malposition? When the transposition is not complete, what I mean to say is there is no exactly opposite direction, aorta coming from PA and LV giving the PA and RV giving the aorta. When it is not complete, it is called malposition. Anything in between normalcy to complete ulta transposition, so anything in between is called a malposition. When both arteries originate from the same ventricle or are overriding, example in a double outlet left ventricle or a double outlet right ventricle. So in these special situations, more often than not, the great arteries are side by side. If the aorta is on the right side, it is D, like normally present. When the aorta is on the left side, it is levo, like we mentioned in levo TGA. Just that these are malposed. This is not complete transposition. This is malposition. When it is malposed, most often the diagnosis is double outlet right ventricle or a double outlet left ventricle. I'll explain this in this image for you. So in this image, which is transesophageal echo, mid-esophageal LV long axis view, what we are seeing in this view is a left ventricle, a right ventricle. Again, difficult to define on this one, but we have defined them based on other views as well. So I'm coming to the conclusion directly that this is the right ventricle and this is the left ventricle. What I wanted to show here is, since it's transesophageal echo, things behind, close to the probe are posterior, things away are always anterior. So the aorta is anterior, the pulmonary artery is posterior, a big dilated pulmonary artery, a bicuspid pulmonary artery with some stenotic gradient across this, and this is aorta. So what we are saying is there is overriding of ventricle and the aorta is anteriorly placed, the pulmonary artery is posteriorly placed. Again, I repeat, I have used all the characteristics of great arteries and ventricles, which I have mentioned already, to come to this conclusion in this. This is only a depictive picture. As I said, we have to go to many loops and come to this conclusion, whether this is right ventricle and this is left ventricle, this is pulmonary artery and this is aorta, like those I have used. Here I'm trying to say a very important point is, both the great vessels are in long axis. Normalcy is, if one is in short axis, the other one is always on long axis. They are all perpendicular to each other. But when they're parallel to each other and they are probably anteroposterior to each other, specifically like this, you will see them both in long axis. When you see a great artery is both in long axis like that in one view, likely that it is a malposed artery. Okay, again, conotruncal abnormalities, like I told you, the third part, the abnormalities related with third part could be a completely complete transposition of great arteries, whereas the right atrium, situs soleus of the right side, L-looped, D-looped right ventricle is connected to the aorta. Right ventricle is connected to the aorta, the left ventricle is connected to the PA. This is a classical transposition of great arteries. Here, one specific point that I wanted to make was, one of the definitions of left ventricle that I have missed out earlier is aorto-mitral continuity. This is the aorta, this is the mitral valve. Normally, if you see, the mitral aorta has to be here, and there has to be a continuity between the AML, that is the anterior mitral leaflet of the left AV valve, and the aortic annulus. So this loss of continuity or discontinuity of aorto-mitral junction is one of the pathologic features of a malposed great artery. It means the great arteries are not normally positioned. If they are normally positioned, the AML and the aorta are to be continuous. So this is a malposed great artery definition by aortomitral continuity as well. So we mentioned the DTGA. In the LTGA is nothing but in which there is L looping of the great vessels, whereas it is also associated with an AV discordance. So the left atrium opens into the right ventricle. So there is a discordance there. And the discordance is also at the great arteries level, whereas the LV opens into the PA and the aorta opens into the RV opens into the aorta. So this is defined like this: a situs solitus right atrium, L looped left ventricle, and L transposition of great arteries. So this is completely congenitally corrected heart, because at the end of the day, functionally, right atrial blood goes through one opposite ventricle, goes to the pulmonary artery. Effectively, the right atrial deoxygenated blood is continuing to go into the pulmonary artery. This is a congenitally corrected TGA. Now, we mentioned the connecting segments. Let's get into a little bit of these connecting segments. So to go to this, there are 5 types of atrioventricular connections. One is concordant, that is normal. The LA opens into LV. We are talking of the atrioventricular connections. Atrioventricular connections. Left atrium opens into the left ventricle is normal. When the left atrium opens into the right ventricle, this is discordance. Okay, opposite, there is discordant. Always remember, atrioventricular valves are defining factors for the ventricle. If this is tricuspid, this will always be right ventricle. If this is mitral, then it will always be left ventricle. The ventricles follow the AV valves. The second one is discordant one, like we discussed already, but along with some amount of situs inversus. The right atrium is on the left, whereas in the situs solitus, the left atrium is on the left. So ambiguous, like I mentioned, right isomerism and left isomerism. In these situations, there could be a complex anatomy of atrioventricular connections as well. The third, fourth, and fifth part of the atrioventricular connection abnormalities are the single ventricles and the absent single ventricles, or the double inlet ventricles. The definition of 50 applies here. What does the definition rule of 50 mean here is, in the atrioventricular area is one fibrous ring. So when majority of the fibrous ring goes on to the left side, we call that atrium as left-sided atrium, and we call that as left-sided double inlet. When majority of that fibrous skeleton goes on to make the right-sided structure, it will cause a right ventricular dominant, that is double inlet right ventricle. This is inlet. Remember, AV always related to inlet. So going on to ventriculo-arterial connections. What are the different types of ventriculo-arterial connections? Cordant, normal cordant, LV opens into aorta, RV opens into the PA. Yes, sir.
How much more you have?
I have another couple of slides. I'm just going to summarize in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So concordant and discordant is a TGA with and without levoth transposition of the great artery. So again, when it comes to, like I said, the again rule of 50 applies here. When more than the great artery which gets more than 50% from a given ventricle belongs to that ventricle. So in this one, the pulmonary artery takes most of them from the aorta. More than 50% of aorta takes origin from the right ventricle. So we call it double outlet right ventricle. The same on the opposite side called it double outlet left ventricle. So we have mentioned, just to brief summarize, visceroatrial one, whenever it is ambiguous, the ventricular loop D, L, and X that we mentioned. The designation of great arteries can be situs solitus inversus, and if it is a transposition, it could be D or an L loop. These are the Malpost great arteries that I mentioned. So few practical approaches or take-home messages that we should look at is, when we are doing an echo, we have to re-emphasize whether the stomach bubble and the liver are on the right side that we are talking of. We're coming to the atrial solitus. Of course, we have to take into consideration the appendage morphology. Going on to the ventricle, very important to identify a moderator band to say it's a morphologic RV. It's very important to see the AV valve. AV valve means atrioventricular valve, to see whether they are septophilic, which is usually a tricuspid valve, or a septophobic, that is away from the septum, that is a mitral valve. Always remember, ventricles follow the atrioventricular valves. Tricuspid leaflet or tricuspid valve will always have right ventricle with it. And always remember to look at the septum carefully. Great arteries, like I said, look for the branching and look for the arching. And most important among all is always communicate with your team and communicate with the heart as well. Keep looking at it. You will get a lot of hints from the surgical field, which will help us decide which ventricle is and which of them is the great artery coming out. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Sridhar, for that excellent exposition of the segmental analysis of the congenital heart. This is a very important subject, especially when we are dealing with pediatric cardiac anesthesia and patients.
Yes, sir.
Several important points have been highlighted. The one important point is morphological features identify the structure, not the position of the heart, the position of a particular chamber of the ventricle.
Yes, sir.
And the position of the heart may be abnormal, but the structurally the heart may actually be normal. That's also another point which you made. That's a
Yes,
right thing. And you differentiated what is difference between transposition and malposition and other aspects of situs, ventricular looping, arterial connection, etc. were dealt with very nicely. Thank you for this wonderful lecture.
Thank
So
you.
now I see that I will first open this to our experts who are sitting in the audience. Can I ask Thomas Koshi to make some comments on this? Any additional point or any question you would like to ask?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good morning to all. Sridhar, it was a brilliant lecture.
Good morning.
You covered every aspect. I enjoyed watching the slides and listening to every sentence you spoke. So
Thank
covered
you,
everything, and it's of practical importance inside theater. And many times we pick up some abnormalities which are missed by the cardiologist.
Yes,
Yeah.
So the double out that right ventricle diagnose become double out that left ventricle inside the
Yes.
theater. So this is very important for a pediatric cardiac anesthetist to learn this sequential segment analysis and routinely do it every case. And it takes only let me say that 5 to 7 minutes to do this sequential segment analysis with the transducer Vajilaco. It is not at all difficult. Occasionally, some cases you find it difficult, but 99% of cases you can do this sequential segment analysis in child OT. Am I right, Sridhar?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Most often than not, yes.
I would say that for an expert, it will take 5 to 7 minutes, but when we are not so experts, it may take longer time.
Yeah,
So
but our
that is
concept
the
is very clear,
importance of
sir.
practicing.
Always ask for help.
Yes, yes.
Practicing it. And I think you covered everything. I think some of the things, a couple of things you missed. Did you say a comment about the venous drainage and pulmonary veins drainage?
No, sir. I haven't completed
I think
that.
I missed it.
No, I did not get into details of those. Like I said, it's a very dry topic to begin with, more so for non-pediatric cardiac anesthesiology. So trying to make it more perioperatively associated was the whole intent. Yes, I haven't covered the pulmonary venous and the systemic venous in details.
In detail, because sometimes we find this
Agreed.
Pulmonary venous drainage abnormal.
Agreed.
Then we have found out by sequential segment analysis IVC interruption also.
Yes, sir.
So that we have picked up intraoperatively.
Yes, sir.
Then the other thing I want to say that NRG, anomaly related great arteries, can be found out in the RV inflow outflow view or AV short axis view, where how pulmonary artery and aorta is related. Related. When we look for the VSTs, the same view can be used for the relation of great arteries.
Great artery.
Where it's a DTGA, LTGA.
Yes, sir.
Like that. That is equivalent to the transthoracic view. That is what we routinely do.
Okay.
And the third thing is what I want to add is how to differentiate between a right arch and left arch in ascending aortic. Aortic arch long axis view.
Yes, sir.
When the left arch will be on the right side of the screen and the right arch will be on the left side of the screen. So these are the things I want to add. Brilliant lecture. I thoroughly enjoyed.
Thank you, sir.
I want to listen it again.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Koshi.
sir.
Can I invite Dr. Kumar from Madurai? Madurai Kumar is there. Dr. Kumar, are you available? As he's coming up, we can ask Dr. Kamalesh Taylor, do you want to add any point or any?
Good morning, sir. Thank you for Sridhar. It was excellent lecture, and then I really enjoyed each and every sentence is what Dr. Thomas Koshi sir is mentioning. It is well refreshing and kind of a lecture. I want to add few points where you mentioned about the tricuspid valve and the mitral valve. This is absolutely right of mentioning about septophobic and septophilic. Tricuspid valve is always septophilic.
Yeah.
Only thing is the apical displacement may not be correct always because sometimes
There do exist exceptions. There always do exceptions. Agreed.
Same level.
Yeah.
So that will not always be right. And
Agreed.
then I think I don't know about that pulmonary vein which we have mentioned that more than 3 pulmonary veins considered as a
Again,
left
there are exceptions for that, but overall as a screening tool, probably
something.
will help. Yeah. There do exist
And then
exceptions.
coronary sinus always drained into right atrium, but sometimes we may have one coronary sinus in complex congenital,
Okay.
which will kind of give something which is little
Yes.
difficult. But
Yes.
to begin with, all the students, it's very well precise and excellent lecture. I enjoyed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamlesh. Thanks for joining us. Dr. Vinayak Desurkar is available. Dr. Vinayak Desurkar. Vinayak Desurkar. Dr. Geeta Kannan, do you want to say anything? Please unmute yourself. Any questions can be asked. Please raise your hand, and any questions please relating to today's topic.
Not really right now. I'm going to listen to it once again. I think I kind of joined a little late. It's like 11 o'clock night here. So
Yes.
I will listen and then I send you the message, Dr. Muralidharan.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Dr. Prabhu Shankar is there. Dr. Prabhu Shankar. Dr. Prabhu Shankar of Jaydeva, he is the president of FCA. We look up to him for all our programs. Dr. Prabhu Shankar, do you want to say something?
So I guess we're bothering people on a Valentine's Sunday.
Prabhu, your audio is muted. Please unmute your audio. Your audio is muted. Your audio is muted. Yeah. Now you see.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, now it's fine.
Good morning, Prabhu Shankar, sir.
Hi. It's good. You mentioned about the regarding the drainage system of towards the RA. What happens to the common atrium and all? How to identify the coronary drainage? Because in a nutshell, you told the supradiaphragmatic and all.
Yes, sir.
Where is it difficult? It is not difficult to identify in a common atrium.
Common atrium ends up embryologically as an aberration of the intraatrial septum growing, whereas when in common atrium, still the left-sidedness and the right-sidedness of the common atrium do normally exist. That the pulmonary venous drainage is more on the left side, the systemic venous is more on the right side. It's just an aberration of the intraatrial septal growth. So I still believe the appendages do help in a common atrium as well.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else to add to that?
Yeah.
It would be nice to know.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Good.
Thank you. Rajiv, are there any questions in the chat box? Dr. Keshamurthy, do you want to say something? Dr. Keshamurthy?
No, sir, he has a very nice lecture,
nice
Sridhar, as usual.
Good morning, sir.
And good morning.
Keshamurthy is the vice president of FCA, and he assists us to make the programs. Thank you, Keshav. And Kumar is there from Madurai. I saw him some time back. I don't know where he's there. Dr. Kumar.
Can I ask?
Sanjeevani, yes.
Morning, very nice lecture, and I would also like to listen to it again. It's a learning again. I just wanted to ask, have you seen retroaortic innominate anytime? Retroaortic innominate.
So going back to retroaortic innominate. So in any structures around the trachea. So in congenital heart is one of the relative contraindication for a transesophageal echo insertion is an aberrant subclavian, is a TAPVC, where passing a probe would cause compression of a few vital structures, the total anomalous pulmonary venous connection, the aberrant innominate, the aberrant subclavian, where the esophagus also is pretty much compressed. In those situations, we tend not to put a transesophageal echo unless there is a real need for it or it's going to change much, to be frank. So in that sense, I'm not very sure if I have seen a retroaortic innominate artery image for that matter in a transesophageal echo.
And anytime seen Shones anomaly complex.
Yes, ma'am. We do. We have done transesophageal echo for Shones quite a lot of time. The classical Shones and the variants of Shones as well. Yes, we do. We have seen a lot of those cases as well. Yes. I'm sure it was not related to this, but definitely Keshav sir probably can add a lot of them in the next coming weeks.
So next Sunday,
Regarding,
as we have a
Shones,
session on congenital heart disease, please join us. Yes, yes.
Thomas.
two things I want to say. One is regarding Shones imaging and everything we have published in Canadian Journal of Anesthesia. So that is one. Secondly, I just want to add how I routinely do start the sequential segment analysis by just looking at the four-chamber view, the base to apex orientation, just like we look at the chest X-ray. The base to apex orientation is from the left side of the screen to the right side of the screen. That is levocardia. If it is the reverse way, it is dextrocardia. That's like we see on the chest X-ray. So I always start with that view. Four-chamber view, how the heart orientation is. From left to right, base to apex orientation, or from right to left.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. One more minute to go. Anybody wants to ask any question? If there are no questions, we will close this meeting. And thank you, Sridhar, and thank you, Prabhu Shankar, Kamalesh, Thomas Koshi, Vinayak Desurkar, Sanjeevani Inandar, and Kumar for joining us. Next week, again, we have the continuation of congenital heart disease. Dr. Keshav Murthy will be doing it. Please log in by 8:45 so that we don't lose time. So we can start sharp at 9 and by 9:45. I want you to enjoy today the Valentine's Day. So we will close this session and thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, FCA, for this support. This program. Thank you. Thank you.